And that's actually a great analogy because the nation state controls the clearinghouse. We cannot create our own currencies. We can't create for equities for very good reason because you just get mass fraud, right? But now we have this new market infrastructure that we can basically do wild, wild things. We're going to be able to create exotic currencies with very interesting properties that solve our problems of tomorrow. Like, what does decentralized identity look like? And it's going to be far more secure because in the old system, like, Visa, if you get somebody's credit card number, you can steal their money. And then in a bank, right, if you get somebody's private information, you can drain their accounts,
Mhm.
right? And it's when you store your crypto keys very securely, you're going to be a lot more secure.
Which is
But
where we get into like a YubiKey and the
exactly.
vaults and everything. Hello and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety. Hello and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I am your host, Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety, and I am super excited today. We have a wonderful guest on the show. Andrew Melnychuk-Oseen is founder at SagaSolve, and he'll tell us what that stands for in just a minute. But Andrew is amazing. He's been predicting the future throughout his life, and he understands the long arc of history and how that can help us show the way to the future. And what I love about Andrew is how he removes uncertainty in the space when it comes to AI. And he's very good at telling us how the chips are going to fall. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks, Jocelyn. Really excited to be here.
So everybody who gets into any kind of tech or safety or anything, but you in particular with tech, and you were really good at spotting how tech was rigged and all of that. But we all have an origin story of what got us
Mhm.
into this. And can you share yours with us?
Yeah, it would go back to my childhood of in a library that was kind of underfunded. So it was in the 80s, and but I got books from the 60s that were talking about what the future was going to be of it was going to be kind of like a lot of leisure time. Machines would be doing the work for us, and we'd be spending time with friends and family, like the Star Trek future, right? And then, of course, I got into Star Trek: The Next Generation, to watch the spaceship battles. But all those ideas got implanted in me of like building a better future, right? And this is kind of what I saw the future to be. And then, I encountered Toy Story, and then I was like, I'm doing that for a job. And that was a good mix of art, math, science, programming. And that got me into the basically the computer graphics field as a computer animator. And then, you naturally get into tech. And then I stumbled across Bitcoin. And then when I saw that, I was like, well, people are sending money around the world without a government and banks. And I didn't really understand why at the time, but I was like, okay, that's going to change everything. And I went all in just on the principle, like, I didn't understand why the internet disrupted everything except the banks and governments. Like, they got web pages. And I'm like, okay, like, what, it really did transform everything, right? Like, we saw
Yeah.
entire industries fall up and down. And then so that got me into market infrastructure. In my art background, I'm actually a bachelor of fine arts, so I learned a lot about every subject. They computer science, math, history, philosophy, all these. So you take a lot about you learn a lot or a little
Yeah.
about a lot. And so that helped me connect the dots essentially, and that's kind of got me where I am. So it was a lot of luck to get here.
That's great. Well, it sounds like also you and I share something in common. I like spending part of my time in my left brain, part of my time in my right brain, and
Yes.
bouncing back
Yeah.
and forth. And I can spot a fellow a fellow whole brainer when I talk to him. So it's great. That explains why you see so many of the things that you see and connect
Hmm.
them. So when did you tell us a little bit more about Bitcoin? We talk about Bitcoin and how to do it safely on here, but
Yeah.
honestly, let's just dial it back. I mean, there are still people. I mean, we have a lot of people on here, a lot
Yeah.
of tech listeners, but and people who understand the basics of tech. But even people who work in tech have a hard time explaining to anybody else what Bitcoin is, how it works, why they should do it, and what they should. be careful
Yeah,
about.
the
So
big
let's have you
picture.
break it down for us.
Yeah, the big picture.
Mhm.
Could I share my screen?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome,
Now, we
awesome.
have some listeners on podcasts who won't be able to see it.
Oh
So
yeah, so
describe what
I'll definitely explain what I'm showing here.
perfect.
So I'm going to share my desktop.
And they can always bounce over to our YouTube channel or the website smarteronlinesafety.com to find it, and we will share this. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. So what I'm showing here is there are essentially six infrastructures our civilization runs on to cooperate. It's really about cooperation, building a better future together when we cooperate. So, how do we do that? Well, we have a transgenerational memory, and I'm talking about the way we record information and share it and really pass it to the next generation. That's what allows us to build our civilization. So, that's information infrastructure. So things like clay tablets, books, databases, and an LLM. And when you get into market
So everything that's
infrastructure,
recorded and passed down, so that we're
exactly.
not starting from scratch over and over again.
Yes. And this information, it can update. Like new science comes in, it's out with the old, in with the new,
Hmm.
right? So there's a very strong correction mechanism.
Hmm.
And now, where Bitcoin comes into play, you have to look a little bit lower level than currency and money. You have to look at something called market infrastructure. And market infrastructure is the thing that how we record our promises on. And that's our trust infrastructure. And
Hmm.
so that computer network, it's in traditional finance, this is called a clearinghouse. Banks use clearinghouses.
Hmm.
That records transaction finality. So when we can record a promise to one another, what's very important is that history never changes. It's a tamper-proof record. Once we have that system where we can record something and it won't change, we can build currencies, we can build electronic equities that are tradable, and that gives us global finance. And that's why a clearinghouse is very heavily regulated by the government because that's the rule. You cannot change that list. Like when you send a wire, right? Like when criminals get trick people into sending wires, that money can never be reversed because it hits that clearinghouse. And the rule is the history can never change under any circumstance.
Right.
And that's why no private organization is allowed to run a clearinghouse. They have to be government regulated. That is an impossible computer science problem until Bitcoin. And so what Bitcoin gave us is what you can see here is it gave us the next market infrastructure. And so I have things like BOLA, coinage, laws, clearinghouse, titles, and of course a blockchain. Um, that is the internet revolution, right, with the market infrastructure. So that's a convergence of communications technologies and market infrastructure having a convergence. And that's
Well,
called,
some people don't understand what blockchain is
yeah,
different from Bitcoin. So let's just break that down because this is where people start, their eyes glaze over and we start losing them. It's like, well,
yeah.
people need to know about blockchain so they can understand Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin and blockchain, they're kind of one and the same. You can't pull them apart. The
Mhm.
token is inside the blockchain. So a blockchain is what it is. It's a consensus mechanism. So everybody can agree that what goes into it is going to stay and it's going to be permanent, right? And once it's in there forever. And a blockchain is public. So anybody can join, they can make an address, and they can receive money. And that cannot be interrupted by anybody, right? So its parallel is really the clearinghouse. So when you make a transaction on Bitcoin, you make a record, right? Before it's money, before it has, we value it. What we do is we put a message into the system. It distributes it to everybody in the network, and then we can all check if that message is in there. It's a
Which is
DC.
very similar to if you were wiring money. Like today, the modern,
Exactly.
oversimplifying it, but it's kind of like the equivalent
Yeah.
of
It's a
you wire
wire.
me Zelle and it goes from your account, your bank sends it to my
Yeah.
bank, and it goes into my account, and there's a record all the way through it.
Yeah, yeah. So in Zelle, I'll go through Zelle, then it goes through the bank, and then it hits the wire system, and then your bank account gets updated. So it's going through those layers.
Right.
Uh,
Passing hands,
yeah,
handoffs.
it's passing those hands. And it is remarkable how traditional finance is actually set up and it operates on a global scale. It's kind of a miracle because,
And on a trustworthy one. I mean,
On a trustworthy, yeah,
people
the whole
can
thing.
wire money to cyber criminals, but that's not because of this infrastructure we're talking about.
That's
That
right.
yes, exactly.
So, like with that breakthrough,
Hmm.
that gives us completely new market infrastructure. That so that gives us the ability to create new currencies, new equities. So before Bitcoin is a currency, think of it as that underlying computer system that allows us to build new currencies, equities, options, bonds, and futures to
Hmm.
trade with one another globally.
That's a great description because that kind of gives everybody a visual
Yeah,
to start
it's the
either
computer system.
understand it or start understanding it, which is great.
And it's a very big change. The last time market infrastructure changed was in 1450. That's the Third Reformation. And what happens is uh, before that, it actually changed in 0 AD. We got double entry accounting that
Okay.
came out of the Middle East, and then it made its way up to Venice by 1450.
Hmm.
But at that time, 1450, I think your listeners will understand that the printing press was made.
Hmm.
And that uh, gave us books. You know, the Catholic Church was disrupted, but one of the first books ever written was called, I think it was Summa de Arithmetica by, I think his name was Percoli. And he printed the double entry accounting techniques of the merchants of Venice, and it exploded across Europe.
Because it
And
got printed on Gutenberg's press
on Gutenberg's
and
printing
then
press.
got democratized because everybody could get a copy. They didn't have to come sit at his feet
Yes.
and be a an apprentice. They could
Yeah.
read a book and learn it.
Oh, and that's actually a really great point. I'm glad you brought that up because that's how those techniques were actually passed down. It was through apprenticeship. And then once the information infrastructure supercharged that knowledge, that really destabilized the Catholic's church hold on finances because they
Well,
really
it
controlled
democratized.
business.
It democratized
It democratized it.
information.
Yeah,
And
information.
now what you're saying is blocked, and just like social media
Yeah.
has democratized our access. Like there'd be no Billie Eilish. Possibly, I mean, Capitol Records or whatever could have signed her,
Hmm.
but all these YouTube stars that came out of everything from MySpace and YouTube and everything that are phenomenal, artists, and we go hear them and we hear them on however we do our streaming music. But
Hmm.
had they gone through a traditional route, they could have been so told, no, we don't want to sign you, and we
That's
can't
right. The
heard of them.
gatekeepers are
So
gone.
all of this is about gatekeeping, and whether
Yes.
you mentioned the Catholic Church, but regardless of what the entity is, there's gatekeeping, and so the democratization that blockchain enabled
Yeah.
was around particularly financial with.
And that's actually a great analogy because the nation state controls the clearinghouse. We cannot create our own currencies. We can't create for equities for very good reason because you just get mass fraud, right? But now we have this new market infrastructure that we can basically do wild, wild things. We're going to be able to create exotic currencies with very interesting properties that solve our problems of tomorrow. Like, what does decentralized identity look like? And it's going to be far more secure because in the old system, like, Visa, if you get somebody's credit card number, you can steal their money. And then in a bank, right, if you get somebody's private information, you can drain their accounts,
Mhm.
right? And it's when you store your crypto keys very securely, you're going to be a lot more secure.
Which is
But
where we get into like a YubiKey and the
exactly.
vaults and everything.
Yeah.
So for anybody wanting to get into Bitcoin, definitely do not do it through having some general password or even a special password without having a
A
physical
hardware wallet.
hardware key. You have to have
Yeah.
a hardware key, or you may as well just be leaving your bag of cash on the hood of your
Pretty
car
much.
or leave your house. Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if we look at what happened in the past, we had this huge change in our institutions changed. And when information and trust market infrastructure, when they collide, that's like an industrial revolution, but it's at the institutional scale.
Mhm.
And what we're going to see is actually we're going to see our nation states and our corporations actually dissolve, and something else is going to come up and replace it. I think that's going to be a network of agents and humans.
Mhm.
And they're going to be using essentially cryptocurrency to coordinate. And
And
that's,
for all of our listeners who are playing at home, this I know there's a lot of sci-fi sound in all of this, but this is
yeah.
what a lot of the think tanks around the world are talking about. This was a hot topic in circles in Davos this past, this past month,
Hmm.
everything. So it's really talking about. So okay, you brought up Venice and you brought up some the earlier times. With democratization comes great upheaval.
Oh, absolutely. It's massive
And
upheaval.
so,
Yeah.
and because you're going from centralized power to
Decentralized networks.
decentralized power,
Yeah.
and I guess that's what brings us kind of back to one of the core themes of this show, which is about how do we stay safe and all that. Because whenever there's
Yeah.
kind of unrest and destabilization, this is why there's such volatility in
Yeah.
Bitcoin. I know so many people who are even work in tech. I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley. Their peers are, people. Bitcoin is even more like cilantro than cilantro. You either love it or hate it. There's not any in between. You're either
Hmm.
terrified to get it, or you're afraid, or you got some and lost it, it got stolen, or you're all in. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about that because you're an eternal optimist, and you
Yeah.
see that you also
Oh,
took
yeah.
certain precautions,
Yeah.
when you went in. So let's talk about that. I love your optimism. Let's talk about your optimism around this, and then let's get into your. Then we'll start talking about AI also.
Oh,
And
yeah. And how it's going to mix, because that's actually the main
okay,
driver.
so let's talk
So,
about Bitcoin here and the optimism despite all
yeah.
of. Unfortunately, the destabilization makes everything like a Star Wars bars. There's more criminals than average citizens
Yeah.
in this
Absolutely.
neighborhood. So
Yeah.
how can you be so positive of that going on?
That's a great question because if you look at this like cryptocurrency space and Bitcoin essentially, it
Mhm.
is rife with scams. It's full of criminals. It attracts them because the technology has no sanctions on it.
Mhm.
And for the viewers, the American government has the power to turn off people's bank accounts,
Right.
right? And that allows them to police at scale. They can't do that to a cryptocurrency. So there's some real enforcement problems that we're going to have to figure out when we go into this new world.
Could I just
Um,
add to also the other thing back to our analogy of you wiring me money? Uh,
yeah,
I've worked with a lot of people who the reason they didn't lose money that they had like scammers and hackers had gotten a hold of their security credentials, like a
yeah,
small mid-sized business, and redirected payroll to an account. But because the receiving bank had noted some suspicious behavior about the
yes,
receiving account, they froze it. The bank itself that the money had gone to was in receivership of that money, but it did not disperse those funds because there was a concern. And and working with the FBI, they were double checking, and then they did not. And that's the only reason that the clients I worked with did not lose their $100,000 or whatever. You don't
yeah,
have that's fundamentally gone. This is a
hmm,
that you do not have that clearinghouse and receivership protection with Bitcoin, right? So that's why talk a bit about that and why people have to be extra careful and how do you guard yourself when somebody can
yeah.
take it.
That's a great question. So you have to understand the technology, right, and the risk.
Yeah.
And when you look at these systems, it's really what you're doing is you're trading risk. So, Bitcoin's very volatile, right? My view is that it is the market infrastructure of the future. So that keeps my optimism going, but that does not protect me from volatility, does not protect me from scams. So you have to understand the technology right now of like a multi-signature wallet where it takes two signatures, not just one. Much like two-factor authentication, you can, when you put that on your Google account, for example, or your email, or use a YubiKey, you can do that with your Bitcoin and you can have multiple signatures and you can keep it safe. But there's a
And
lot of
signature
technical
that's
know-how.
like it's like needing two people
You
with two
need two
keys
keys. That's right. Two
and both
keys.
open at the same time so that
Yeah,
no one person getting a key stolen is going to risk everything. So,
absolutely. And then you got to know really, you got to kind of do know your customer by
mhm.
yourself, right? Like usually you're an example, your bank was able to catch that because they know like, hey, what's going? We're not going to let this hit the wire system because obviously there's some fraudulent activity. And that's actually a really great service where I do think in this transition, banks they will be able to, they're probably going to transform into those businesses of analytic businesses for security
Mhm.
that they're going to notify you as like, don't send that transaction.
Right.
So they're going to
There-
still be able to make money
Well,
in
and
the
there's
day.
also the whole banking and credit union industry coming along as we speak right now into being able to have Bitcoin equivalents.
Yeah, you can see that they're adopting the rails because at the end of the day, Bitcoin moves significantly faster than the traditional wire system, which is called Fedwire. Fedwire and Bitcoin actually transact at the same transaction capacity at 7 transactions per second. But when you transact in Bitcoin, you can send $1 billion around the world in 10 minutes, right? Now that's not really appealing for the retail investor, but where we actually see that appealing right now is Iran, right?
Mhm.
The American government cannot stop them from taking payment for the Strait of Hormuz. And we can all see that that is like an insane problem that we never had to deal with before. Because, the Americans are known for the rules were thoroughways are kept fair. It's fair game going through maritimes, right? That's the
Right.
way it's always been.
Mhm. So you bring up an interesting thing. So it's kind of like the dark web. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
as
It's the dark
dangerous
web.
as it is, and
Yeah.
everybody has information about them sitting there for sale for pennies,
Hmm.
but it was created by our military to protect us and to be able to have a secure communication channel. But anything that's worth building is worth getting stolen and used by criminals.
100%.
That's
Yeah.
what we are. And so the same is happening, so just like the dark web is infiltrated, the bad guys move in and say, "Oh, I love this." There's no restrictions.
Yeah. You
They
got
love
it.
they love, Bitcoin and everything because there's no restrictions. So
Yep. Yeah.
that's what
Monero too. Yeah.
so if people were starting today to invest in Bitcoin, what would you recommend they do?
So my background is like I understand the market infrastructure, right? Now, the way history's gone, there's always been one market infrastructure. You can't have multiple. There's too much friction. Like I can't record my promises in something and then you record your promises in something else and we can't check each other's promises. Like that doesn't make sense,
Right.
right? So when people are thinking about Bitcoin, if you're making the bet that the world's going to change. You either decide, hey, is the world changing or is it going to stay the same? Um, that's going to help you sleep at night.
Mhm.
If you can survive the volatility, I've seen my hopes and dreams go up in smoke 3, 4 times. I started in Bitcoin in 2012. So it's been a long time, a lot of ups and downs. And I would ask yourself, are AI agents opening bank accounts or are they opening up cryptocurrency wallets? And the answer is going to be they're opening up Bitcoin wallets.
Right.
And
And we
that's
have
the most secure,
and we have
right?
8 billion people, and we're going to have 8 million agents if we don't already with everything that's been going on. So
Yeah.
8 billion. So we're going to have that. So that's an excellent point. When you're talking though about the volatility, I think everybody can relate to that around, a lot of people, especially the further you are from retirement, right? There's always the put X% into emerging markets and international, and things
Yeah.
are up and down and
Yeah.
up and down, but it's harder to stomach if it's 50% of your investment
Oh, yeah.
or
Yeah. Because when I did that, I'm a young guy.
right. But then it's also, so I think, one way is people need to realize they need to put hardware security keys in. This isn't like
Yeah.
putting money into an
Yeah.
emerging account in their 401k,
Yeah.
but
It's
it is
hardware
going to have
keys.
the
Yeah.
same volatility. And so invest an amount that you're willing to have that kind of up and down for.
And
And
you don't lose sleep.
yeah, because
It's not
maybe
worth it's not worth it.
even if you just want to get familiar with it, I mean, put $20 into Bitcoin, do something
Yeah.
into a cryptocurrency, I should say, not Bitcoin, but into
Hmm.
a cryptocurrency, just so that you can be like, get familiar with it and get familiar with the idea of having a hardware key and, do things. And
That's really good advice
yeah,
because that's what people are going to need to do when the world changes. There's just I would make it the analogy of like picture the world before mass literacy, then
mhm,
the printing press happened. Everybody had to learn to read and write. Like there was a new skill upgrade, right?
right.
That's going to happen now is like, hey, dip your toes in, learn how to use like a YubiKey is a great starting point. Using a hardware wallet, and you just got to know it's your private key. If anybody asks you for your private key, they're trying to steal your money. So you
Yes.
that's the rule.
Nobody should ask you.
Nobody should even ask. The people asking should know better, and they do know better, and they're trying to steal.
They're
Uh,
hoping you don't know
they're
better.
hoping you know better. If they ask that question,
Right.
that's a sign that they are moving against you and they're hostile.
And one thing you brought up, my very first investment in Bitcoin in Bitcoin was through getting a wallet because some of the hardware wallet people will, some of the manufacturers say, you buy this one and you get $65 of free Bitcoin. So it's kind of like when you're at a casino and you sign up and they give you a card that has,
Hmm.
20 bucks on it or 50 bucks on it to play. They're it's to get you going so that you'll
Yeah,
spend
yeah,
more.
absolutely.
But if you're like, okay, I'll buy $100 wallet or $200, whatever, which one you want, and it comes with X dollar, X amount of Bitcoin on it, or I'm sorry, I keep saying that, but I mean cryptocurrency, but it'll have X amount of cryptocurrency on it that you can get. Well, then it's kind of like you're going to get the hardware wallet anyway, let's
Hmm.
say. And then you're kind of getting this. And if that got stolen, and first of all, it's less likely to get stolen because you're using a hardware wallet, so you're already
Yeah,
protecting it. But then you have a little bit, and you get to be, you get to be able to say, okay, I have cryptocurrency, and you can get familiar with it at very low risk. And
yeah,
then to your point, you can then decide how much more risk do you want to take? And
yeah.
especially if you're like, well, do I want this future to come in 5 and 10 years and even 1 year and not have anything in it? Or do I want to put some in and hedge my bets a little? So I think you have really good advice about looking at it that way.
Thank you, thank you. And there is a security risk. If I were to get a hardware wallet,
Mhm.
make sure it does not come with Bitcoin. That's what I'd look at because what that means is they generated the private key on the device to get the public wallet and then put money in it.
Oh,
So
that's
there's a
the one. Yeah.
huge risk that when you see a service like that, that they're holding on to that private key, and then you're putting more and more money into it and more money, and then the
Well, I
manufacturer.
wouldn't put it in there. I would just use
Yeah.
the hardware wallet to get familiar with it, and then you want to set up your own private, correct?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. You generate your private key.
Yeah,
That's with the hardware wallet.
yeah.
And I really like. I don't know if we should promote products, but there's hardware wallets I really like.
Mhm.
And that.
Sure. Tell us what you like. We have to.
So I would. Trezor has always done right by the community.
Okay.
Always.
How do you spell that
Um,
for our listeners who are listening?
Trezor. I think it's a really good user interface.
Perfect.
And they've always been good faith actors and pushed the
You also
tech
have good
forward.
instructions to help
Yeah,
people
good
get started.
instructions. They've made it easy.
They're
And
trustworthy. Back
yeah,
to the word trust
trustworthy.
we said at the beginning of this, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, they've they believe in it. They really believe in the future, and so they're very purpose oriented.
mhm.
So and it reflects in their product.
That's awesome. That's great. So, Andrew, this is amazing. So, what's the takeaway that people really need to know about crypto and getting into it and staying safe?
So the main takeaway is that it's new market infrastructure. It is the computer system that allows you to create currencies, equities, bonds, options, futures for the capital markets. So we can trade these things and coordinate capital. So it's lower level than money. And if you want to get into it, you make sure you keep your private key away from the internet. If anybody asks you for a private key, they are trying to steal your money. Nobody should be asking for that. That's the general rule of thumb. So use a hardware wallet, and then that's all you got to do. It's just
And
simply
also
a
start
sign a
with a small
signature.
amount, just like you
And,
do
and
with your
start, yeah, start
401k.
small. Don't lose your sleep over it. Just buy a little bit and dip your toes in, go slowly, and practice key recovery. And you're good.
Great advice. Thank you. Wow, Andrew. So Andrew Melnychuk-Oseen,
Mhm.
how can people reach you, follow you?
So I'm on LinkedIn at AMOVFX, and HTTPS:// Saga SAAGA solve.com.
Awesome.
And yeah, if you want to learn about agents that make agents, that's what I have. I have one of the first hyper agents.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank
Yeah,
you.
this was a great talk. This was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed this, Jocelyn.
That's awesome. So great having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
everybody, you've learned some incredible information here from Andrew, from our conversation, and things that you've solved and probably sparked some more questions for you to continue to answer. So just keep all of this and just know that whatever you're doing, just you want to stay safe out there. So until next time, please stay safe out there.